All right, guys, before we get started talking about the Philadelphia 76ers, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the video and even hit the bell. That'll let you know about more videos we got coming out. Now, let's talk about the 76ers. All right, my last video about the Jazz, someone requested we talk about the Sixers, so here we are. All right, the 76ers this offseason, it's a little bit up in the air. They recently fired Brett Brown, and the news came out recently that when D'Antoni left the Houston Rockets, that he might be going to the Philadelphia 76ers. And we all saw the news, or at least anyone who's plugged in, saw that the Sixers were interested in hiring Mike D'Antoni. And not only that hiring Mike D'Antoni, if they hired Mike D'Antoni, that would include some sort of trade. And when you talk about this Sixers team, basically that's the thing that comes up. What kind of trade are they going to make? Because things have gone a little bit sideways in the last season. And so it made sense that when Mike D'Antoni would come over, that maybe a trade would happen. But the Clippers let go of Doc Rivers. And we now know that the 76ers have hired Doc Rivers, and he's now going to be the head coach. And does that change anything? I think it does a little bit, but not as much as you would think. So hiring D'Antoni, we all know that D'Antoni would have come in and done a very offensive focused system. He's done it everywhere he's gone. He invented the 7 seconds or less thing in the Suns, with the Suns, and everywhere he's gone, he's actually had a level of success that I think is underrated. I actually don't know if I'm a fan of hiring Doc Rivers over Mike D'Antoni, honestly, because I think this team has shown to be such a good defensive team that bringing on someone like Mike D'Antoni would have been interesting for the offense. But I do think that Doc Rivers is a really nice coach. Is he a top 5 coach in the NBA? No. But Sixers fans have been dealing with some tough coaching for these last, with Brett Brown. I mean, he was a good coach in terms of getting this team to where they are, I guess. But then when it came to going into the playoffs and X's and O's, finding ways to overcome and beat some of the elite coaches in the East, he couldn't do it. And honestly, in the East, the talent in the West in terms of players is just better than the East. And anyone who thinks otherwise is probably incorrect, because the East has obviously a lot of high-level talent, but it's just not as deep as the West is. But I would argue that the East might have some of the best coaching when you think of Nick Nurse, and I already forgot his name, head coach of the Boston Celtics. He looks like Mike Buttigieg. How can I remember that? I'm not the head coach. But anyways, there's good coaches in the Eastern Conference. And the 76ers needed it because they were getting out coached in some of these things. You were having these formations with their team that just, you have like Ben Simmons just kind of sitting in the dunker spot for every single playoffs. And they almost beat the Toronto Raptors. It was one shot and they would have been advancing. If it goes another way, they probably win that series. And so they've been pretty close. Getting rid of Jimmy Butler, I think we found out, was a big deal for them. But I actually feel like bringing on Doc Rivers, you're going to see some improvement with this team. You're just going to see things run a little differently and probably a little better. But my prediction, this is a prediction show. This is a prediction podcast. What do I think is going to happen? I think that if it was Mike D'Antoni, they'd have been making trades this offseason. We don't know how long this offseason is going to be, by the way. Word is that, season might be starting around March of next year at the earliest, probably. So it's going to be a long offseason. We're going to see a lot of things. I don't know when the trade deadline is going to be and all these different, when that's going to be. The draft, I can't remember if it's late November, early December. But I don't think the Sixers are going to make a trade this offseason. But I do think that they're going to make one at the next upcoming trade deadline. Because what I think is going to happen is Doc Rivers, who's signed a 5-year deal with the Sixers, is going to come in, and the Sixers are at least going to want to have at least one more look. Let's see what it looks like with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid with a bona fide coach. And we know that Doc Rivers is a good coach. When he has really good talent, he's shown that he can actually win a finals when he did in Boston. And he's always been a playoff coach with the Clippers, whether it was with, Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, when Blake Griffin was the high-flying Blake Griffin. And then he's done some things with Tobias Harris that was really impressive. He actually brought a group that not a lot of people expected to be really good, and they actually won a lot of games. People don't talk about that Gallinari team, Gallinari, Tobias Harris. That was a nice squad that was a squad that I don't think anyone really predicted would be as good as they were, and he did a good job. And then obviously they bring in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and get bounced in the second round. And whether you believe that's Doc Rivers' fault or Paul George, that's up to you. I actually believe a little bit that that's Paul George, but it is what it is. You are the coach, and you've got to find a way to at least win 1 out of 3 games when you're up 3-1. So, that's why I don't think Doc Rivers is one of the best coaches in the league, but I do think he's probably top 10, maybe 9 or 10 or something like that. We're not going to talk about that. But anyways, so what you do is you have Doc Rivers come in, and he is going to give this team a nice offseason. They'll have an offseason to do what Doc Rivers does, and he'll able to come in and bring a system, and I do feel like he does really well. I think one of the underrated aspects of this is that Doc Rivers already knows Tobias Harris, and I think Sixers fans have been a little disappointed, and I think Doc Rivers, who has a relationship with him, can improve his play and bring him back to the level he was at with the Clippers when he made him a max level player. The Sixers paid him a max. And, as much as Sixers fans kind of complain about that contract, the Sixers were not the only team that were interested in Tobias Harris. That rumor with the Utah Jazz wanting Tobias Harris was true. It was absolutely 100% real. So, the Sixers were the ones who ended up with that big contract because they wanted to keep the guy they traded a lot for. And now he's got a big contract, but bringing in Doc Rivers can kind of salvage that a little bit. That's another thing, though, is that salary cap situation is not good for the Sixers. So what's going to happen is they're going to have an offseason with Doc Rivers, who's going to do what he does. He's going to bring in a system. He's going to bring in leadership, which I actually do think they need. They need a guy that's going to come in and kind of lead the way a little bit better, provide a little bit more direction for Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, provide kind of like a stabilization to the organization that has been in the last few years kind of all over the place. I mean, they've gone from like Twitter scandals to bad trades to bad contracts. I mean, the process is like millennium ago, it feels like. Now where the Sixers are just in this flux where they do have high-level talent that, to be honest, do we really know if it quite fits? And that's the thing that's going to happen is they're going to have an offseason to implement everything. Doc Rivers is going to bring in a culture that he brings that is a positive winning culture. And then you're going to have I thought I heard a ghost. It's like something was moving behind me. My green screen. What was that? Sorry. Anyways, let's keep going. I was like legit scared. Like, what was that? Anyways, you're going to have the offseason where he's going to implement everything. And then you're going to have the first half of the season where Doc Rivers is going to bring this team to, and we're going to see what they are. And if you can't figure it out in that first offseason, then something's got to change. And what's going to happen is Doc Rivers is going to know, like, hey, this is the guy that we need to move, and this is the guy that we're going to keep. And that's between Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, because I do think that Tobias Harris' contract is big, and I don't know if there's a lot of teams that will trade for it. And I don't know, honestly, if the Sixers want to, because, honestly, he's a good shooter. He is big at the wing. He can play 3-4, switch ability on offense and defense. Can do a lot of things, and so you're kind of stuck with that. But I think the Sixers do need to kind of pick who they want between Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. In the comments, you can let me know who you think that is. And if you think the Sixers should trade Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons, maybe you think they should keep them both. Maybe you think that they both can make it work. My opinion is that I think that they don't quite mesh. But I guess we'll find out, because what happens is Doc Rivers may come in and he may figure it out. And if those two guys can play together and you can win with those two guys and Doc Rivers can unlock some things with them, fantastic. I think the contract that we are going to see traded 100% is Al Horford. And that's a bad contract, although we talk about bad contracts and we talk about the Al Horford signing like it's horrible. But the honest truth is how Al Horford is a really good player. And I bet you that there are some GMs out there that would look at Al Horford and say, well, the Sixers bring him in and they have him playing as a power forward next to Joel Embiid. And it just does not work because he's a little bit older and it's really not what his style is. Because because when Al Horford is on the floor, and we saw this with Boston, he's better when he's playing at the center position. He's better when he's kind of a focal point of the offense where he is moving the ball to shooters and things around him. And we know that Al Horford is a very solid defender. But when you have him playing at the power forward, he's kind of just relegated to being a spot-up shooter, which honestly, he's not that elite level of a shooter. I mean, he's good enough, and that good enough shooting is what helps spread the floor for another team, but you need him playing at the center position for that to work. And I remember last offseason where they talked about Horford. I think he wanted to play power forward, and maybe that could have been because he wants to like get the contract with the Sixers and stuff. But I think there are going to be some teams that look at Al Horford and will say, hey, we could probably get him for if we, Sixers fans might be thinking they might have to give up a pick. I bet there are teams out there that might be willing to take a flyer on Al Horford that want a solid center that can stretch the floor. And they might be willing to actually give like a second-round pick to the Sixers for Horford and clear them of that contract. I don't think you're getting much more than something like that for Horford. To me, that's like a best-case scenario. Or some sort of player on the last year of a contract that kind of fits. Maybe another team has a bad contract they want to get rid of. There might be a contract out there that maybe a certain team wants to get rid of. There's the rumor we saw recently that was interesting was Buddy Hield. If you did not see, Buddy Hield has been having problems with the Sacramento Kings. The reason it affects the Sixers, just interestingly enough, is that someone on Instagram posted a picture of Buddy Hield in a Sixers jersey, and Buddy Hield liked it, and it was talking about trading for Buddy Hield and bring him over. I don't think that the Sixers are going to be able to get Buddy Hield straight up for Al Horford, but that might be someone that, let's say you give Al Horford and a couple picks and maybe even a couple firsts to Sacramento for Buddy Hield. That's a trade I could see maybe interesting to the Sacramento Kings, because the Sacramento Kings are also coming up on some cap situations, having to have De'Aaron Fox get a contract soon. They have Bogdan Bogdanovic that they want, and now they have a problem with Buddy Hield, who doesn't want to talk to, not answering texts with his coach, Luke Walton. I can remember Luke Walton. I still can't remember the name of the Boston Celtics coach. Someone let me know in the comments. I can't remember his name. What's going on here? But anyways, we'll just keep plugging through here, guys. Anyways, I could see bringing on someone like Buddy Hield, and that would be an amazing trade for them. If I'm the 76ers and I feel like, hey, we want to make sure this works with, let's say it works for the first half of the season with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. What you need to do is just put shooting around them. And let's say you bring in Buddy Hield, who plays off ball, so he's perfect to play off of Ben Simmons. You put him on the floor. You have Tobias Harris, who we know is a good shooter. You have Joel Embiid, and then you find ways to just get, Josh Richardson and other players that can shoot the ball around them. So you have like a 0.4 in Ben Simmons with shooters and Embiid. And that's theoretically something that could work. And we know that Ben Simmons can't shoot the three. It's the thing everyone talks about. But you know how you fix the not being able to shoot the three thing? Put the ball in his hands. You have to play 0.4 with Ben Simmons. And if you do that, you can win a lot of games. I mean, we know this has worked with other teams. We had that stretch of the last half of the season for the Houston Rockets where Russell Westbrook went nuts. And we know that he had one of the worst seasons in terms of three-point shooting, but the last half of the season before the whole thing went to crap because of COVID, he was having a killer season. It was good enough for them to give him all NBA. And why? Because they put the ball in his hands, because he's a talent at getting to the rim. Same with Ben Simmons. He is a physical specimen who can get to the rim. For his size and his ability to pass the ball and vision, he gets to the rim at an impressive rate. Now, does it happen in the playoffs? Maybe not quite as much. But if you see teams like the Denver Nuggets who make Jokic a point center, and you can figure out an offense around that, my guess is that you can figure something out like that for Ben Simmons. And I think Doc Rivers is going to do that. But I think you're going to see the ball in Ben Simmons' hands a lot. And the other reason why I think probably you might be happy with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid is because the defense works. When Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are on the floor, the defense is fantastic, And one thing that makes a good coach is their ability to make things work with the talent that you have. I mean, honestly, you think about the things with Brett Brown, and the fact that he was not able to figure that out is kind of criminal in a way, because it's pretty obvious, and it took this long for them to put Ben Simmons at the 4 spot. He had to go. And someone like Doc Rivers is going to see that because he's really good at figuring out the strengths of players and then building everything around that. And honestly, if I'm the coach, that's what I'm doing. I'm putting the ball in Ben Simmons' hands at all times, and you're going to see pick and rolls with Joel Embiid, and that is a monster two-man game where you have just big bodies doing the pick and roll. And there are teams that have stretch fours that cannot guard Ben Simmons if he's at the 4 spot because he is a big dude and he moves fast and he has a decent touch at the rim, and we all know what he can do with passing the ball. And so you have that kind of size coming down to the rim, especially with Joel Embiid, who's a lob threat, who has a fantastic inside game. That is a good duo. So if you're doing a two-man game with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid every single play, and then you're surrounding the floor with Tobias Harris, you go out and you get someone like Buddy Hield, and you do what it takes to get him on the team, and Josh Richardson and other shooters, that's a monster lineup that can both defend and score. And that's the team we should have been seeing, honestly, for the last 2 or 3 years with the Sixers, and they just haven't been able to get the right pieces that fit. Honestly, the Horford signing was a mistake because you needed other types of shooting on the floor besides just, having 2 centers on the floor. I mean, you wouldn't put Jokic on the floor with Embiid because you would be mitigating what they both do, and that's what's happened with Horford. You're mitigating his talent by just making him a spot-up three-point shooter. So why don't just get spot-up three-point shooters, Go out and just get those guys, and you can make it work. So that's what I'm thinking, guys. The first half of the season, they are going to just see what happens. They're going to have a whole long offseason with Doc Rivers installing a new culture. And I think that's a good hire for that reason, because you need culture that works for everybody, that shows, coaching isn't just like coming on the floor and like substitutions and X's and O's and plays and all that. Coaching also includes hiring the right staff that can work with individual players. Coaching includes, setting up the right schedules for these players, working with them on their player development, working with them in the off season, setting up their training, continually working with them to figure out where they're at and figuring out how to improve them, not just like, on practice days, but off practice days. And it's just creating like a whole infrastructure of a team. And Doc Rivers is going to help with that a ton. And so we're going to see them be better next year. Honestly, I think the Sixers are going to be a team that's going to surprise a lot of people. And I think Sixers fans are going to be happy with what they see with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, because I think they can, they don't have to love each other, but they're going to love playing with each other when the things are going really well and you have a coach that knows how to win. And so I'm excited to watch the Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid two-man game. And I do think that the Sixers have to find a trade partner for Al Horford. I think there's more buyers out there than you would think that will be interested in bringing him on. There are teams out there that want to stretch center, and he can do that, and he can pass the ball, and he's still got talent that can help a team win. So I think that's something that could happen. Guys, that's all I got to say. I forgot the coach of the Sixers. In the comments, let me know his name. Brad Stevens. I remembered. Guys, like and subscribe to this channel. I will talk to you later.